All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome again, Fantasy and Facts. We're back for part two of our week one preseason wrap up. Pretty much going through every matchup for the first week of the preseason. If you missed part one, check us out on YouTube. Already posted on there. Part two will be posted on there soon. So we gave you guys the first 8 games of the preseason in our last episode. We'll go ahead and wrap up with the second half, the last 8 games. So how's it going, Ty? How's everything coming along?
Everything's going good, just mock drafting, preparing for all these drafts coming up in the next couple of weeks, getting ready for the fantasy season.
Yes, sir. And next week we'll go ahead and we broke down every game for week one for you guys. Second week we'll kind of just pick a couple games, some that has some really good performances, and we'll break down a few of those top performers for you. Um, so we'll go ahead and jump right into it. For those of you that came over from episode one, thanks a lot for coming over. Here we have for the first game of part two, we have Pittsburgh and the New York Giants. Pittsburgh ended up taking that game 20-12. We did see a couple of names in there that may generate some fantasy points or have a fantasy impact at some point in the season. Um, Ty, who stood out to you in this game?
Well, I think the the offensive weapons in this game didn't stand out to me because Paul Perkins didn't play too well.
Yeah,
We expect Paul Perkins to be the starting running back for the Giants, and he's not looking like he's going to be able to handle that role right now. So we probably want to look at other options like Orleans Darkwell or Shane Vereen and pass on Perkins at his fifth round ADP.
absolutely. And yeah, he did have a terrible performance. 5 carries for 3 yards. So not exactly what we wanted to see. Obviously, all the starters weren't playing, so maybe he can bounce back from that. Be on the lookout for our week two summary. We may be discussing him. Geno Smith played in this game, starting for the Giants. Went 10 of 16, 114 yards, no touchdowns and an interception. A turnover machine as always. Do you think he'll be wrapping up that backup position behind Eli Manning?
I think it's just how many quarterbacks the Giants want to keep on their roster. They also drafted the rookie quarterback Davis Webb out of Cal. He played. He was 8 for 16 for 67 yards. I'm sure he's going to make the team. Do they want to keep 2 quarterbacks or 3 quarterbacks is the question. So we got to monitor that. Gino, hopefully he makes it because if he doesn't, it's going to be hard for him to come back.
Absolutely. And another name to bring up, Orleans Darkwa, who could also be competing for some playing time in that Giants backfield. Had 3 rushes for 18 yards. It's first game of the preseason, so pretty light workload on him. Nothing too crazy. We did see a little bit of Evan Ingram, the rookie tight end for the Giants in this one. He only had 1 catch for 11 yards. Um, but impact-wise, I guess this game kind of didn't have too many of the big names. Obviously, Le'Veon Bell is out of camp right now, yet to sign that franchise tender. Um, but yeah, anything else at all that you see in this game? Obviously, there
Well,
weren't that many big names.
we didn't get to see James Conner, the backup to Le'Veon Bell, play, and
Right.
Martavius Bryant didn't make his preseason debut yet. I just want to keep an eye on Juju Smith-Schuster, the rookie from USC for Pittsburgh. If he can win the third receiver spot, he might have some fantasy value, during the season. But it'd be hard to pick which games that would be in. But we see sometimes Pittsburgh loves to throw to their third wide receiver, whether it be Marquise Wee, Davis Hayward Bay. So just keep an eye on Juju Smith-Schuster.
Gotcha. So your top three for the Steelers wide receiver position, you think it's going to be Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant, and Juju Smith-Schuster?
Yeah.
No Eli
Sammy,
Rogers?
Smith Schuster is a much better player than Eli Rogers. Well, Eli Rogers is good, but he's going to make the roster. But yeah, Smith Schuster is a much better player.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, yeah, so we'll move right along. Like we said, that game didn't have too much going on in it. But we'll go to a game that did have a name that's pretty much buzzing all over fantasy right now. When the Tampa Bay Bucks played the Cincinnati Bengals, the Bengals took that one 23-12. One of the biggest names, obviously, I'm talking about is obviously Joe Mixon. So tell me what you saw about Joe Mixon. One thing, let me before you start, let me go ahead and just point out Mixon. I see some Le'Veon Bell comparisons in him. What do you think about that, Ty?
I think that's a great comparison. And Mixon can catch the ball like a receiver, and he can run like one of the best running backs in the league. We've been down this road in the fantasy world with Jeremy Hill several times. He after his rookie year, he just hasn't had much value besides the 1 yard touchdowns he gets. Mixon doesn't have to come off the field on passing downs, and he can stay on the field when they're in the goal line area. So I don't know what's keeping Marvin Lewis from just making him the full-time back right now and moving along and see what excitement and energy Mixon can provide to this team. But I think during the middle of the season, Jeremy Hill will be the odd man out, and Gio Bernard will be healthy, and maybe Mixon and Bernard can uh, advance this Cincinnati Bengals offense.
Yeah, and Bernard is coming off that big knee injury, so they already stated in camp that they're going to work him in slowly. So I feel like Mixon is kind of like that perfect candidate. I mean, obviously he's going in like the mid to late second round right now, so he's skyrocketing up there, even though he's not even guaranteed a starting position right now. But everyone's pretty much assuming like how can you keep the ball out of this guy's hands? Like I mean, I'm watching him out there. He's got that vision. He's out there making cuts. Um, I mean, he really looks like the real deal. And
You you don't draft him in the third round and get all the scrutiny around him to not play him. It's just when are they going to play him,
exactly.
and we don't know that right now.
Exactly. What about for the receivers on Cincinnati? One thing I did notice is that they do have, quite a loaded receiving core with AJ Green, Brandon LaFell, Tyler Boyd, Tyler Eifert, and then obviously their rookie John Ross. So a lot of depth in that receiving core. Who do you think stands out? Obviously outside of AJ Green this year.
Besides Tyler Eifert and AJ Green from the receiving core right now, I'm a big Tyler Boyd fan. Brandon LaFell's spot is probably going to be taken if Ross can get on the field. The Ricky John Ross can get on the field, and Tyler Boyd is just we haven't seen that second receiver have fantasy value on a consistent basis for the Bengals since AJ Green's been in the league. Um, the last time we seen two Bengals receivers have fantasy value was Hushmanzada and Chad Ochocinco.
Yeah.
So AJ Green, he's probably gonna finish top two, top three when the year is done at receiver if he stays healthy all 16 games. And Tyler Eifert, he's always looked up in the red zone. But then you have Mixon and Gio Bernard who are gonna catch passes. So does Tyler Boyd is Tyler Boyd able to work out of that slot and have any fantasy value? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, and on the other side of the ball, let's talk about the Tampa Bay backfield because obviously Doug Martin has that 3-game suspension to start the year. It kind of got some playmakers back there. Jaquiz Rogers, obviously a little bit older. Chris Sims. One name I do want to bring up as kind of like a dark horse is Jeremy Nicholas or Nichols. I'm sorry, McNichols. He's a pretty shifty back. Got a little size to him. What do you think he can do in this backfield
Oh, I
as the
love
season goes
I,
on?
I love McNichols coming out of the draft. He When I seen him go to Tampa Bay and I knew Martin was going to be suspended, I said Martin would not get his spot back in my mind. I thought that, and now you're hearing that McNichols is struggling with the playbook, struggling with pass protection. So it might be a little while before we see him, but he is better running back than Jacquizz Rogers, and
Right, I agree.
I think they want the era if Doug Martin to be over in Tampa Bay sooner than later.
Right.
So and not only that, they've given Peyton Barber the second year player out of Auburn a lot of playing time during the preseason and the end of last year.
Right.
So we have to see what they're gonna do. They're talking up Doug Martin, but maybe that's for trade value in the future. But that's McNichols is somebody I would keep an eye on. He can catch and he can run.
Absolutely, yeah, and for me, I think I'm gonna avoid. I probably might avoid the Tampa Bay backfield altogether because it looks like it might be a mess. That's probably not something you're gonna know who takes over until during the season. So it's something to keep an eye on. But as far as drafting, if they don't fall to you in a reasonable position, if there's other starters that can produce for you week to week, I would definitely stay away from some of these guys. Definitely don't reach for them.
And let me bounce off of that. If you do end up with Zeke Elliott on your team and you can't get McFadden, Jacquizz Rodgers is probably going to be the starter for the first 3 games of Tampa season, so that can help you get past the Zeke 6-game suspension. So keep that in mind because you don't always have to go Zeke and then later on get McFadden. You can also go get Zeke and then maybe get a Jacquizz Rodgers or any other running back that's going to be starting the first couple of games of the season.
Absolutely, and to piggyback off that a little bit, you know, you don't have to make sure you guys are planning, your draft. So, if you're drafting some suspended players or players, that are going to be starting for a suspended player, make sure you kind of, have it laid out to where you have somebody that jumps right in once that suspended player comes back, or you have a backup plan as to who's gonna fill in that role, who's producing for you during that suspension time. And all right, now moving on to the next game, we got your San Francisco 49ers.
Before you move on, Jay, what did you think about Jameis?
Jameis, he's still progressing. I feel like he still has some growing to do. I don't believe he's over those turnovers yet. He likes to take a lot of risks. So as far as Jameis go, I have him pretty much like he's one of my top 10 quarterbacks this year, just based off the potential of putting up points because I do know they like to pass the ball. You have Mike Evans and then adding that threat with Deshaun Jackson and Cameron Brate. I'm really big on Cameron Brate. I feel like that's one of his favorite targets there. So Winston, I feel like he's gonna give you that production on a week to week basis, but those turnovers they're still gonna be there. So you want to be cautious with that. But I definitely have him as one of my top 10 quarterbacks right now.
Yeah, I seen them give Jameis Winston and the first team offense a lot of playing time. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And it seems like he's forcing the ball to Mike Evans a lot. Instead of spreading it out and letting the game come to Mike Evans, it seems like he's forcing it to him for some reason,
Right.
which can be dangerous because teams can predict that and, you know, turn those into turnovers, and which is not going to be good for Jameis Winston. Tampa Bay really wants to run the ball, which makes the Russian attack intriguing, but we don't know who the best runner is going to be right now. Um, but I didn't like what I seen in Jameis the first game. Maybe he matured throughout the preseason, but I think Jameis is just going to be Jameis, and he's going to be a gunslinger, a Brett Favre, a Jeff Blake, Aaron Brooks. You know, those guys who can have the 350-yard passing days, then turn around and have the 200 or the 195-yard passing games. You know, with the 4 interceptions. So
Exactly.
Jameis is if you're in a two QB league, he's a great second quarterback, but I don't have him in my top 10.
Right. And the only reason I have him up there is just because the weapons he has around him. Obviously, he like I said, the turnovers are going to be there. But I think he's third year he's thrown over 4,000. First QB to throw over 4,000 yards in his first 2 seasons. So that's a record. I'm expecting another 4,000 more touchdowns. Hopefully he can limit those interceptions a little bit.
But does he see the offensive weapons he has and try to outplay himself? Does he try to force the deep ball too much? Does he try to keep Deshaun Jackson too happy? This is what I want to see from him.
Absolutely. A lot of those issues with Jameis Winston comes within his own head. So if he can get that mind right, it should be a good year for him.
Yes, yes.
All right, and going right on to next game, we got your San Francisco 49ers against the Kansas City Chiefs. San Francisco took that one 27-17. A lot of names in this game, Ty. Who stood out to you in this one?
Well, first I gotta say I'm thankful for the win that they provided. Well, let's start with the Chiefs. Pat Mahomes, he's looked like the Chiefs are setting him up to be the quarterback midway through the season. Uh, every I watched the game at least two or three times, and they threw a lot of deep balls. What does Alex Smith struggle with is the deep ball. Pat Mahomes, he can run, he has the agility, and he's a gunslinger. He'll throw the deep ball, which they have a lot of speed. Tyreek Hill runs a 4.3. Chris Conley, the other receiver on the other side, he runs a 4.4. And then you have Kelsey, who's not a slouch at tight end.
Right.
So I think Andy Reid, even in Philly, Andy Reid loved the deep ball with Donovan McNabb. So I think if you want to take one of your last picks and pick up Mahomes in one of your deep leagues, he might benefit you later in the season. Uh, on the 49ers side of the ball, uh, I'm not big on Garcon like everybody else is. He has a tough schedule out the gate. He's playing almost as hard as Dez Bryant without the Dez Bryant talent. Um, and Matt Breida really showed me a lot. I think if Hyde continues to struggle, he might not get cut, but Matt Breida might get the first opportunity with the starters. And then I seen Marquise Goodwin and Hoyer had a connection, which might might have a lot of fantasy value more than the Garcon connection. But I want to continue to look upon that in preseason game number 2 and 3.
Right. And on the other side, on the Chiefs side, I do like Patrick Mahomes. He's putting up a fight, and I've read news out of camp saying that he's based on the pressure he's putting on Alex Smith, is forcing Alex Smith to throw some deep balls. So the Chiefs offense, if they can get that passing game in order, I think they can make a really deep run. Late in the season and also into the playoffs. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Tyreek Hill, he caught that one long pass for 32 yards, so it looks like they're trying to get him vertical, which is a good sign. Especially if your league like ours, if they come into, you give any bonuses out for any big plays, anything like that, definitely keep an eye on that. Another name that kind of jumped out to me, Joe Williams, the rookie running back for the 49ers. 7 carries for 60 yards with a long rush of 17 yards. What are your thoughts on him, Ty? I know you've been watching him a lot.
Yeah, they gave him a lot of sweeps this game. I would have to watch the next couple of preseason games. They just gave him sweeps. They didn't let him run up the middle, just sweeps. They used his speed. He's the fastest running back on the team. They used his speed. He's not much of a pass catcher outside of the backfield, which Mike Shanahan likes. Well, not Mike Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan likes to have as a pass catching running back. Um, and actually, he's worse than Hyde. Hyde is a pass catching back, but not as good as they would like him to be. But Joe Williams is not known to catch nothing. Matt Breida can catch. Um, I think Joe Williams. I think it's going to be a committee. If Carlos Hyde doesn't take the starting running back after week 3, I think it's going to be a committee, which is not good for us fantasy owners because you most likely going to draft Carlos Hyde or have already drafted Carlos Hyde in round 4 or 5, and now you got to worry about is he going to get carries or goal line carries or who's going to be carrying the ball for him on a consistent basis.
Right. And another thing I wanted to mention, I just wanted to ask you. Obviously, I know 49ers is your team. What do you think about that Brian Hoyer to Marquise Goodwin connection? Do you think that's something we could look forward to as the season goes on, as maybe like his go-to?
Well, you remember last year before Brian Hoyer got hurt, win or loss, which they didn't do any winning, but he
He was
targeted
slinging. He was slinging that thing.
to Cameron Meredith.
Yeah.
And like I said, sometimes you look at when he was with the Bears and he was looking at Alshon, he's seen that number 1 corner on him. All right, that's a decoy for him, and he looks to the number 2 receiver, who he feels more comfortable throwing it to,
Right.
because he knows he doesn't have the arm strength and the accuracy to force it to the back shoulders or the fades to the better receivers. And I think Marquise Goodwin is going to benefit him and Aldrick Robinson and another guy, a sleeper, uh, Trent Taylor. I think he's better than Jeremy Curley. He's going to be playing a lot of slot. He catches everything so far in practice. Are going to benefit. But Marquise Goodwin is the speedster. He can go deep, and he shows that he's not afraid to go over the middle. If you look at Pierre Garcon, the first couple of games, he's going to see the number one corner from Carolina, Burberry. If I said his name wrong. Then,
Bradbury.
yeah. And then we go to, well, not we, well, the 49ers go to Seattle, Richard Sherman, then St. Louis, Tremaine Johnson.
Yeah.
Then they go to Arizona with Pat Peterson. So that's, if you want to slow down the 49ers, hey, let's stop Garcon. And I think all these teams are going to put their number one corners on Garcon. And I don't know if Brian Hoyer is going to feel comfortable throwing over there, knowing that he wants to be starting quarterback in this league for more than one season.
Right.
It'd be smarter for him to avoid those matchups.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, you definitely don't want to be testing number one corners in this league, especially the guys coming up on the rise today.
Yes.
All right. And going on to the next game, it was pretty much a pretty snoozing game. Tennessee and New York Jets. Uh, Jets taking that one 7-3. Wasn't much offense in this game, but we did see a couple names such as Derrick Henry. Mariota played for a bit in this game, and even on the Jets side, Christian Hackenberg looks like he might be taking the starting job in New York. And also on the New York Jets side, we have Ryan Anderson, the wide receiver there, who's expected to take the leap after the injury to their number one receiver, uh, Quincy Enunwa. It looks like he'll be done for the year. So with a neck injury. So, Ty, what did you see in this game? Like, who stood out to you? What do you think about Ryan Anderson and some of the other parts in this game?
Well, we know the Jets are tanking. Robbie Anderson, he's a speedster. He can get you big days and bad days. He might be the next Deshaun Jackson,
All right.
the boomer bust. He's probably the only receiver that has fantasy value right now. There's a lot of rookie receivers I like. Darius Stewart from Alabama. Uh, but it looks like Bilal Powell is going to be receiving a lot of catches out of the backfield. I think he has the most fantasy value on the team because he's going to have, even if he only has 40 rushing yards, he can have 40 receiving yards, total 80 yards for the day. They're not going to get a lot of red zone opportunities. But I think if you're looking for anybody outside of the Jets offense, it's Bilal Powell. And then Robbie Anderson, like you said, he's going to be basically the only receiver they have that is known or has been seen to get open. Um, but it's going to be a lot of garbage time for any player you get from the Jets.
Yeah, 100%. And for that reason alone, that's exactly why I'm probably staying away from all the Jets running backs.
Mm.
If I'm, late in the draft, I'll probably, if some of them are available, I'll maybe grab, one of their receivers, maybe like Marquise Wilson, something like that. Because I know they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. With that defense, they do have Jamal Adams. I'm curious to see, from LSU, I'm curious to see how he molds that defense. I've been hearing a lot of good things out of camp from him. So if that defense can hold up some opposing offenses and maybe not give up 40 points a game, maybe they just can steal a few games, but definitely they're going to be. I suspect they're going to be passing a lot. So uh, definitely target the wide receivers and more than the running backs.
Yeah, the Jets is just tanking, and who knows if their defense is going to want to play some of these games.
Right. Not even show up. That's good news for my Dolphins, though, right? And what do you think about Mariota? You think he's, coming off the leg injury last year? Do you think he's over that and that he's, continue to put up some crazy numbers? He has that new target and Eric Decker. What do you think his fantasy value for this season?
Well, I think a lot of his expectations are skyrocketed. Everybody's going to be expecting him to do things that they didn't expect him to do last year. If you if you look at his schedule, he's going to play a harder schedule this year because they missed the playoffs by one game. Um, they actually start out with the Bears, which is winnable, and he probably can have a good game. But then they go to the Chiefs, then they go to the Raiders, then they play the Jaguars in Seattle. So you're gonna have to live with the good and the bad for Mariota for the first couple of weeks because I don't think he can make the throw uh, and provide you with enough points without his legs if he's not going to be running. Yeah, and he does have the weapons around him,
Right.
but a lot of his games last year were playing against where he scored a lot of his fantasy points were against the bottom half of the defenses in the league. So we have to be aware of that. He doesn't have a true number one receiver, especially if Corey Davis is not playing and he's only a rookie. So it's the Titans want to run the ball, and the key to their success is running. Um, I don't think Rashard Matthews is going to put up the fantasy year he did last year, but I do think DeMarco Murray uh, will have another great year out of the backfield. So that's something you can get in the second round is DeMarco Murray. But as far as Mariota, uh, he's out of my top 10 in quarterbacks.
Right. Yeah, he's out of my top 10 too. He's in the top 15 though.
Yeah, it's top
Um
15 for sure.
yeah, so I mean, that running game he's gonna rely on that running game obviously, which will draw some defenses up. They're gonna implement Derrick Henry a little more. That's a name that you might want to keep an eye on if anything happens to DeMarco Murray. But yeah, Delaney Walker, still got that reliable tight end there. I think Eric Decker, they might have a connection with Eric Decker. Eric Decker's always had that he's a lot faster than a lot of people believe, because he didn't run a 40 coming into um, coming into the league, so nobody really knows his 40 time. But he's a pretty quick receiver, so I think they might have a connection as the season develops on.
And like I said, uh, they their best receiver is probably Corey Davis, but he's hurt. But I like the kid Taywan Taylor, and he can own the slot. And Kendall Wright received a lot of targets in the slot for the Titans last year. He's
Right.
not there no more. If Taywan Taylor can get some playing time, which we haven't seen yet this first preseason game, he did get he got playing time not with the first team offense, but second team. He got a lot of targets. He got 9 targets, which means something. That means they were looking for him and drawing plays up for him. So hopefully, throughout the preseason, we can see if he slips in there and plays that slot position.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, and then going on to our next game here, we had Dallas and the Los Angeles Rams. Rams taking that one 13-10. Obviously, this is Dallas's second preseason game. They did play the Hall of Fame game the week before. Didn't really see anybody playing that one. But this one we had a little bit of action. We got to see Cooper Kupp on the Los Angeles Rams side. As far as the receivers go for the Rams, I mean, who do you see coming out of that as maybe the top guy in 2017?
Well, you got Sammy Watkins, and then you got Cooper Cup. We know their new head coach Sean McVay loves to run the offense through tight ends,
Mm,
but is the rookie tight end or second year tight end Gerald Everett going to be good enough to play that Jordan Reed role? But then you have Cooper Cup who can eat up the middle. He broke a lot of records in college in a very high-paced offense, spread offense. So I'm not sure if he can beat every coverage week to week, but if he gets a lot of targets, a lot of garbage time, he can have fantasy value.
absolutely. And Jared Goff, I think I'm curious to see what he can do in his second year. Obviously under new management. I think he might, obviously he's not going to be, finish as a top 5 quarterback or anything like that, but I'm curious to see how McVay can transform this offense. And as far as Gurley, do you think he warrants that top first 3 rounds being drafted? Based on potential, is that's pretty much what everybody's drafted him on now after a
Well, we've
disappointing
seen what
2016.
Gurley can do. Even though he barely reached 1,000 yards, or even did he reach 1,000? Uh, he still was a RB2 in most leagues.
Right.
So if you draft him third round and you already got a running back, or if you draft him third round and you maybe going to get Zeke in the fourth or fifth round, he can have a lot of value to your team. I think he's going to get a lot of carries. I think they improved the whole line. I think the new zone scheme they're running there. We've seen Alfred Morris running his zone blocking scheme. We've seen Robert Kelly running this scheme. So I'm drafting Todd Gurley. I'm telling you that. I'm drafting Todd Gurley. And when I get my hands on him, I've been drafting him a lot of mock drafts in the second and third round. I think he's going to be right up there and have better years than some of the running backs going in front of him, like Jordan Howard or Jay Ajayi. So I think Todd Gurley is potential is going up.
Right, right. And yeah, like you said, in my mock drafts, he has been falling in that like perfect position for me to take him also. So yeah, if he falls to me, right where I'm drafting, I'm definitely gonna take him. I like the potential. Um, I think I'm gonna go like with a little bit of balance of guys that are expected to perform week to week, and then guys that I think are gonna come on later on in the season. So that might be my strategy this year.
Based on Gurley's ADP right now, if you choose a wide receiver in the first round and you want to run it back in the second or third round, he's the best available option based on
Right.
what's around him. It's either him, Jermaine Crowell from Cleveland, or Lamar Miller from Houston. So out of those three backs right now, I'll take Gurley.
100%. I'll definitely take him also. All right. Anything on the Cowboy side you want to touch on? I know we saw Derek McFadden, Alfred Morris. We talked about them a little bit in previous episodes.
Something real fast. I can't wait for Jason Witten to retire. This kid Rico Gathers is a beast.
Rico Gathers, yeah, almost forgot about that one. That guy is amazing.
Too bad you won't know when to start him during the season fantasy this year. But if Jason Witten decides to retire next year, Rico Gathers, he'll be talked about in Jordan Reed and maybe Gronk territory.
Yeah, he's really got that big body to kind of box out defenders when he's going up for a pass. I like him way more than Jason Witten, so hopefully that might be a name that, you could keep an eye on and develops over the season into a role where he's playing at least 50% or more snaps.
The Cowboys are going to go double tight with Dez as the only receiver out there, and then you're going to have whatever running backs in the game in their red zone situations. But it's hard. It's going to be hard to judge when Rico Gathers is going to get his 1 or 2 touchdown per game.
Right.
So that's just something to keep on if you're in a dynasty league. Go out and get Rico Gathers and just wait for Jason Witten to retire.
Right. Yeah, Jason Garrett sounds like he's the poison in
Uh,
Dallas right now. Not letting people eat.
uh,
All right, moving right along. Next game we have Oakland Raiders and the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals taking that one 20-10. We saw some Drew Stanton in this one, and also on the Raiders side we saw some Connor Cook. He had a good week 2 preseason game, which we might discuss in the next episode. But who else? Who did you see in this game, Ty? That kind of stood out to you?
yeah, nothing much. The starters didn't play too much in this game.
Yeah.
Uh, Andre Ellington looks like he lost all confidence in his running ability. He might not even make the roster. Uh, DeAndre Washington got first team reps that Marshawn Lynch was out. DeAndre Washington is somebody very intriguing to me later in drafts because he's actually probably most likely going to be playing the passing downs. Um, Either him or Jalen Richard. I think he's a lot better than Richard. So he has a lot of ability to have standalone value, almost like a theoretic or Duke Johnson when they can get points without having to have their starting running back hurt. So he stood out to me as getting the first team reps ahead of Jalen Richard. But other than that, we gotta wait maybe for week three, preseason week three, so we can see the starters play.
Absolutely. And David Johnson did play a little bit in this game. Obviously, he's going number one overall right now since Le'Veon Bell isn't reporting to camp. It's reportedly he's not showing up until shortly after the third preseason game. So, he should hit the ground running. But obviously, right now, because of that, do you think if Bell was in camp, he would be going number one over David Johnson?
I would still take David because
Right.
he doesn't have the injury history like Bell. He doesn't have the suspension history like Bell. He hasn't been paid yet like Bell,
Right.
and he doesn't have Antonio Brown. Larry Fitzgerald is a Hall of Fame receiver, but he's not competing with Antonio Brown for catches. I would take Davis. I mean, Le'Veon Bell is a close second, but I would take David.
Absolutely. And one more question for you. Do you think Carson Palmer, obviously